Hello and welcome. Welcome back to part 3 of my little series on how to put together a junk journal from start to finish, a basic junk journal. So in this part, I am going to finish up and show you how I add a couple of embellishments, or how I'm going to add a couple of embellishments, and then sew in the signatures and finish up that cover. So the first thing I am showing you is that I finally did glue in that piece that will form the pockets on the inside. I still haven't cut off the extra fabric, but I sewed it in. I glued it in, and then I will sew around the edge of the entire journal in a bit. I haven't done that quite yet because I really like to do that when I'm 100% sure of what I'm doing with my cover. So that doesn't always work out that way. You have to be flexible when you're making junk journals, but I try. So I punched some tabs out of the Christmas cardstock that I have, and I'm going to attach a couple of those in each of my journals because I am making 2 of these, and so I will probably staple those in. And then I cut out a piece of cardstock to make that piece there, and it's a little tuck spot, plus it's a little bit decorative as well, since that cover of the second signature was a little bit plain. And so the next thing I'm going to do is just decorate that little envelope a bit to attach in my journal. Oftentimes I will make it into a pocket, like a flip like that, but this time, because I was planning on not decorating these journals a lot, I wanted to paper clip it in so that the person that gets the journal could, decide where to add it, or maybe just leave it clipped in like that. So I have those stamps, that stamp set. It's a Tim Holtz stamp set from last year, I believe. And I'm going to stamp some words and that candy cane image. And the words are a little bit long for my label, so I have to do one word at a time. I covered up the second word with masking tape. I'll ink up my first word, and then remember to pull off that masking tape because it does have ink on it. You don't want to get an ink blob on whatever you're stamping. So I stamp my first word, and then I do the same thing for the second word, and cover up the second word the first word with masking tape. But then I remember that first word still has ink on it, and so I want to take that off, clean it well, so that when you take the masking tape off again, it doesn't cause another blob on my label. So anyway, I stamped that second word on there. Hope that makes sense. And then I will stamp the candy cane image on the envelope, right on the envelope, and then attach the label. And so I put that on my stamping block, which I know is really, really dirty. I don't know how it got that dirty, honestly, but it's all permanent ink, so that messiness doesn't get on anything else. So I stamp the candy cane, looks cute. I attach my label. First, I ink around the label because I printed it on white paper and I didn't like the white edge, although I don't know if anybody else would notice that, but I did, and I didn't like it. So I'm going to use my glue stick because the paper I printed on is fairly lightweight, and I knew the glue stick would work well. I don't like to use the wet glues unless I'm using heavier paper because they can cause your paper to warp and buckle. So I attached that. I didn't want to rub it with my fingers because just in case the ink was still wet, I didn't want to smear it. So I used my bone folder, and it looks really cute, and I'm going to include that in the journal. So now I am discussing how I finally decided to go back to my original idea for the cover. I don't know why, but I second guessed myself and I pulled out every single doily and lace and fabric I had, honestly, that I thought might work, and tried it and thought about it. And I finally decided this was my best option. And I have 2 of those doilies. I'm making 2 journals, so I've thought, well, that's just meant to be. So I don't want those corners sticking out over the edge of my doily, so I use my corner rounder, to round that corner of that green paper. And then I thought, well, maybe I better round the corners of the little girl image. And I wasn't sure at first. I was just looking to see if it would look nice, and I decided to go for it because, I could always print those images out again if I mess them up. But I did round the corners and it came out fine, and I'm glad I did it because I think it looks nice with the green corners rounded, the green paper. So I'm going to attach the little girl image to the green paper, but before I do that, I will ink around the edges of both of those and get them ready, and then I will glue, and then after I glue, I will take those to my sewing machine and I will sew around the little girl image with my wonky sewing. And I usually like to do a zigzag around those types of images, but in this case I did a straight stitch, in case you're wondering, because I didn't think I wasn't confident in my zigzag sewing around rounded corners, to be honest. I thought it would look better if the corners weren't rounded. So just a little FYI. And then I believe when I come back from that, I have sewn finally around the edge of the entire cover, and for that I did use a zigzag stitch. I like the way that looks for most journals I make like this, I think. But a straight stitch would look fine too. It's really a matter of preference. So I'm showing how I'm going to sew that. And then I will glue everything together later. Once again, I'm waiting again because I want to put some eyelets in next, which is what I'm going to do after this. I finally trimmed that extra fabric. I like to sew things down before I trim, just in case. I don't know, that works well for me. So I did do the zigzag stitch all the way around the edge of the cover, and I have the fabric is fraying, and I have a lot of threads that are coming undone, and so I'm going to use this product called Fray Edge, which you put on the edge of your fabric, and when it dries it keeps the fabric from fraying, and it wouldn't fray too much. It would only fray up until the sewing, but in any event, I didn't want it to fray anymore, so I'll use that later because I have to let it dry, and it's really stinky. If you get it, beware. Very, very smelly. So anyway, I think I'm just saying that I'm gonna attach everything later on. So let's see, the next thing I'm going to do is the eyelets. I know that. But first, I guess I have to talk about how I'm going to attach those pieces. I use Fabri-Tac glue, which I'm sure I'll talk about again later. This is why I speed up my videos a lot of times, because I'm slow and I ramble on. So I have my big giant crocodile to punch the holes and set the eyelets. I love using that thing. It's so easy once you get it figured out. I had to watch a YouTube video so I could figure out how to use it and how to set it, because it has three sizes, but I never changed the settings because I use the same eyelets all the time for my covers, and I'd have to watch the video again to see what the other sizes are. And anyway, so I keep it the same setting, and it's pretty easy. You just punch the holes. I marked where I needed to punch the hole with a pencil, and then I punch the hole, and then I take my pencil. Well, first I have trim because it doesn't, for some reason, doesn't punch everything all the way through. I mean, yeah, it always leaves like that little round part kind of hanging on there. You have to cut it off, and that, at least for me. And that fabric in particular, that white fabric, just has a lot of threads. I have to trim that up a little bit more than normal. So anyway, then I take my pencil and I mark right through that hole to the back cover so that the eyelets are in the same place, basically. And that makes it a little bit easier to get them in the right place without measuring a second time. I don't like to measure. And so that's why I like to do the eyelets before I sew in the pages. But I've done it both ways, and I'm actually working on a journal right now that I finished and then decided to put eyelets in at the very end. So it's no big deal if you don't do it first. So yeah, you just set the eyelets just like that, really easy. And then I'm gonna show you how I sew in those signatures. Okay, so I usually like to make journals with 1 or 3 signatures, because it's easier to make my template. And let's show you why. I should have done this ahead of time, but I guess it's good to show the whole process. Okay, so, well, first thing, let me just, all right, I'll do this first. I like to be all prepared. Okay, so I have all my pages. The first thing I do, first of all, I have these giant paper clips. You don't need anything so giant, but I don't know if they sell these anymore. It says Love Plus Lemon paper clips. I got these at Tuesday Morning a long time ago, so I don't know if you can still get them, but you can use anything. You can use binder clips, you can use other paper clips. I go through and I make sure my papers are centered, or where, you know, as I want them to be, where I want them to be. And once you do that, oh, that is in the right place. And this piece goes centered. Once you do that, you clip your paper, your papers. I clip one on this side as close to the edge as possible without getting in the way. I push down the center part. You want it to be as tight in there as possible. This is where I have problems. And then you clip the other side. So you have your signature ready to punch holes in. I'm going to do the other one because I generally like to be all prepared. And now you might see some of my pages here because I'll go through and make sure you've seen most of them anyway. Not many surprises. Okay, sorry, this is a little bit fiddly. But you want to make sure that your pages are where you want them to be, generally. Oops. And, you know, if something doesn't come out exactly straight, that's why they're junk journals in my mind. They don't have to be perfect. Okay, so that's pretty close, but my pages aren't even put together that well. Oopsies. This is not. Okay, let's see. All right, that's pretty good. As I move it, hold on. Okay. This one I would like to look, this first page, I would like it to look Nice. So let's move that up a little bit so it's a little bit centered. Put that in there. Make sure it's all in the right place. And then do the same thing, paper clip, this front part. Push down in the middle. You want that to be as together as possible. You'll see why in a minute, because I'm sure I'll mess it up. All right, so I've got my 2 signatures ready to punch holes in. Move those to the side. Okay, so I made a template the same width and height of my spine. I could have divided this into thirds to get the location of where I'm going to sew in my signatures, but I felt like there would be too much of a gap if I did that between this part and the first signature and this part and the second signature. If that makes sense. So what I did was I again folded this in half and then folded these in half again to get the halfway point between the center and the end. And I did that on both sides. If I have I'm gonna have a bigger gap in the middle when I do it that way. And if it doesn't look good to me, I can put a ribbon. I could put a ribbon and then tie it on the outside with a pretty bow, and I think that would fill in that spot if it looks bad. I'll just have to wait and see how that works out. I've done that before, I think, with other journals. But anyway, back to this. This is why I don't like this part. Usually I have templates made up already. Usually one of them works, but this one I have to make one up. Okay, so I have my lines. You can draw a line with a ruler, but I can see that pretty clearly. So I did not draw a line going down. You might want to do that if you're starting out. Mark your top. That's important for a reason, which I'll get to later probably. Okay, so then so I have my 2 lines where I'm going to put my signatures. Now I want to have a hole in the middle, so I fold this in half to get my middle. That's pretty easy. And I circle where I'm going to put that middle hole. Remember, you're not doing anything with this now, so ignore that line. And then I measured, usually on larger journals, I measure 1 inch from the top, because this, and the bottom, because this is so small, I'm doing 1/2 inch. I measured 1/2 inch and I drew a line across, and where those lines intersect is where you're going to make the holes. I hope you all can see that. This brown was not the best color, but I just had this little scrap, so I did the same thing down here. I had this little scrap of brown and I used it. Okay, now I need this to punch the holes in my spine, but to punch the holes in my signatures, I need a piece like this so that I can punch the holes into the signature. So I made up another template and I measured the exact same way and made 3 holes. You'll see how that works in a minute. I just thought of something that maybe I can use a darker pencil. I don't know if that'll show up better, where I'm going to punch the holes, and to help me too. Okay, so we have 3 holes and 3 holes. I like to punch the holes from and I use this only because the awl will go through into this cardboard. Otherwise it would be blocked by my fancy phone book. And so what I do next is I have an awl. You do need some kind of a pokey tool like this to punch your holes. And what I'll do is I want to make sure I'm in the right place. The top is here because you want to make sure the holes are lined up with this on the spine and then with your other piece so they match the holes where they are. They should anyway, but you just never know. Okay, so this part's stressful. I'm making holes. So I punch a hole there and there. and there, and there, and there, and there. Now, sometimes when I remove my template, that looks pretty good, I will go back in and try to make, yeah, see, that didn't even go through all the way through. There's like a thread. I think there's some miscellaneous glue in there. That didn't even really go through the fabric. So I just like to do this again just to make sure you can see it. Sometimes fabrics tend to close up once you make the hole too, which makes it a little more challenging. If you ever have trouble finding that hole that you punched, I often put the journal up to a light, either window or a light source, and then I figure out, oh, there it is, because sometimes it's like camouflaged. I'm not kidding. Okay, so the holes are pretty good. I might have to redo that again as I'm working, but for now I'm good. I take my cardboard off. I don't need that anymore. And then I'm going to punch the holes in my signatures, and this is why you need a second piece. So I have my signatures ready. Once again, before I punch holes, I put it in the center of my phone book. I'm going to push down on that center. You want those to be as together, as tight as possible. I put my template in top there, push it in, punch the holes in, make sure the holes are all the way through your papers. You can hear it go through my phone book there. It hit my glass mat. And once again, I do the same thing and just make sure that the holes are actually punched all the way through. Doubles, make sure. It just makes it easier for me at the end. I mean, to sew them in. Okay, then I do the same thing with this one. Top, just line it up, push that in, punch the holes. I always start with the middle. I don't know why. That's the way I do it. And do the same thing again. I don't need those templates right now anymore. Punch the holes. Make sure the holes are punched all the way through. Get the thread going. Okay, now let's take one at a time. I have this color thread. It's waxed linen thread. I buy it like this. You can also make your own if you have some beeswax or a bar of wax and just wax your thread. You don't have to use waxed linen thread either. That's what I just use, and I've gotten used to using it. So I have several colors. I'll just show you my fancy. I mean, there's nothing but fanciness around here. My needles, and I have the cream off-white. I have brown, black. I bought a package that had purple and this color, which is actually really pretty, but I think I've used it one time. So that's what I usually use, cream, black, or brown the most, as you can see. I have a little bit of cream left over, but I don't want to run out in the middle. It's very stressful. So I started a new roll. Okay, so here's what you do. You take your thread and you measure 1, 2, and 3, approximately. Whoops, this side. Now, I'm gonna have a lot left over, and honestly, I'm gonna measure my other one while I'm doing this, so I'll be all ready to go. For my second signature. I do waste a lot of this thread, but again, I don't want to run short, because then you just have to start all over again. There's no fixing that in the middle of sewing on your in your signatures. So because of that, I just rather err on the side of caution. So I'll show you. Whoops, put my needle away. Okay, so this is wax linen thread, so it's, if you pinch it at the end, it makes it flatter, so it can go through the needle a bit easier. I don't know what the size of this thread is. So then, I don't really need this phone book here, but I'm going to keep it here anyway. So then you go through your middle hole from the inside, and you pull it through. And I've said this before, I think. I am an awkward, I'm awkward at doing this. Some people are much better. See, I already can't find that hole. And some people just put it in and they punch through they put their needle through this and this at the same time. I just can't do it that way. I'm just not that coordinated. So the only time I do that is if I'm doing one signature. So what I do when I can't find that dang hole is I put my awl through. So there it is. And then I line up my needle so I can push it through. It's still almost eluding me. It's because of that fabric there. If that wasn't there, it would be a lot easier. And then you pull it through. And I leave extra thread. This is why I need extra thread, because I do it this sort of awkward way. You punch through the top or the bottom hole. That one went through okay. And nothing, you don't have to worry about anything being tightened up or whatever right now with your thread. I mean, punch it through that bottom hole, and if it gets stuck, I have some pliers, and you just pull it through, which happens sometimes. See? Awkward. Sometimes if you have a lot of thick papers, that happens. Okay, so leave a little extra thread there so I can see what I'm doing. This is awkward, and there are better tutorials out there, trust me, that show this. Okay, go through the top hole, but you're stuck with me now, so, and pull it through, and then through that top hole here, which is really easy to see, thank goodness. This is, by the way, this is called a 3-hole pamphlet stitch, so if you want to search it and see someone doing it better than me, and see, even though I have extra thread, it's not a whole lot of extra here. So what I do then, I probably should have left less. You leave a tail here. I forgot to say that part too. And let me just pull some extra thread through there. So I have a little bit of room here on the end. I don't want to be even more awkward than I already am. Hold on. All right. Sorry. Again, awkward. This is why I've never showed this before. Okay, it's all gonna work out in the end, I promise. You go through your middle hole again to the inside and pull it through, and make sure that your part isn't sticking out. Oh, this one is a little bit too close. And then you see, I don't have enough thread there. Oh my gosh, hold on. Because I pulled this too tight. There we go. Loosen it up a little bit. Because I do it this awkward way. I have problems. Okay, you put it through the middle, push it through, and pull it out this other end. And you're done with the first signature. Almost done. Okay, now I tighten everything up. So what you do is you pull your strings here so that it's flush. I pull this one so that's flush. Then you have all this left over, so you pull on this part and then the middle part and you tighten it. Whoops, I think it's this one. One of these is gonna work. There we go. Okay, so see, that's really loose. You want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So you pull this a little bit more and tighten the middle again. So you check everything that's still too loose. I'm going to go back and fix that and make sure that everything is pretty tight there. It's a little loose, so I'm going to go back and tighten that up and then pull on this one and pull that one again. So, is it better? Let's see. I keep moving this so it's not better. All right, see, that's too loose, so you want to make sure you do not have that. I'll get there one of these days. Okay, much better. And I always double check this side. Looks good. And then what I will do is I will put one string on one side of this middle thread and one on the other and tie a knot. I tie a double knot. And sometimes, because I have so much left over, I'll leave this and put a little charm here, dangle charm. I am not going to do that with these. I'll cut the thread off and leave it. We're done with that. Okay, now we're going to sew in the other one just like that. All right, I am going to sew in the second signature into the next set of holes that I punched, and I still have trouble finding that one hole there. It's mainly because of that thin fabric that I have there that creates the pockets. I usually don't have that much trouble finding the hole, the center hole. Anyway, I know I say the word awkward a million times, but that's the best way to describe my sewing in of the signatures. And this one's even worse because my needle came off and I had to rethread my needle. Honestly, I don't usually have this many problems, and I almost always have way more thread than I need instead of running short like I did this time. Probably because it's the first time I've recorded this, so that's what happens when you with me anyway, when I try to show something new. And anyway, so I sped this part up, as you've probably noticed, so that you wouldn't have to watch all this struggling of mine. But I eventually get there, and like I said, I don't usually have this many issues with my thread. But one thing I will say is the more papers you have, the little bit harder it is, or the thicker your signature is, the harder it really is to sew in. So that's another reason not to have super big signatures. So anyway, I finally get that second one sewn in. I'm adjusting all my threads and pulling them tight so that I can tie that knot and double knot actually, and finish up that second signature. So I just want to make sure, double check everything, pull everything, make sure it looks right from the front and the back, and then I can tie the knots and move on. Okay, so that was my awkward sewing in. And that one was a little more awkward than normal even, because I had to rethread my needle in the middle of it. So take my paper clips off. That's done. One thing I wanted to say too, in case you wanted to, you can start from the outside to sew in, outside middle, and do it in reverse and leave your threads hanging on this side so you can dangle beads and things, and I've done that too. I've also bound journals with ribbon. I mean, you can use a variety of things. It doesn't necessarily have to be this kind of thread. So now everything's looking pretty good. What I'm going to do is, what am I going to do? Okay, I think it's the time to attach my doily. The other reason I wanted to wait on this is because I wanted to put that eyelet in first, and then I could put my doily like this. So instead of, like trying to go through the doily too, or just figure out where I'm going to put it. So I don't know. Let's see. I don't know if I'll record all this. It's a lot of gluing. So I think I'll just describe it instead of making you watch that. I glued down my doily with the Fabri-Tac glue, and now I will go around the doily, the edge of the doily, and with that little fine tip bottle, which also has Fabri-Tac in it. I bought that on Amazon, and I use that for smaller, detail. So I'll go around the edge and just make sure that the edges of the doily are secure. I don't want anything coming up if I can help it. And I'm going to do the rest of that off camera, and I made sure that along the spine, which I'll show you in a second, that I put some glue right along the spine there, but I still have to double check those edges. You can see that I just glued that like a minute before I turned the camera back on. I see a little shininess there, and it's already pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'll glue this. I'm going to put a good amount of Fabri-Tac on here, all along the edge, and then in the middle. It's not really the edge. I know I'm putting on a lot. I'm going to spread it around a little bit and make sure that you have plenty. It won't come through. This is a double layer. It will not show through. I've done this before. Spread it around with your finger. So unpleasant. A little bit, so it's not gloppy in spots. It goes to the edge. I think I have too much on the edge there, certain spots, so I'm just going to run through quickly. This starts to dry quickly, so you have to move kind of fast. And then I'm going to put this about here. I'm going to eyeball it. I think that's a good spot. Remember, it's not going to be centered on the doily. And with Fabri-Tac, you can feel like when it's, let's see if I can do it this way. You can feel the wetness underneath, like it's cool, I guess, to the touch. And I just press it down for less than a minute. It works pretty fast. And you can see where I need to add more glue. Like I said, I'll go around the whole thing and make sure everything's glued down well. Okay, so hold it down, hold it down, hold it down. And once I do this, I'll show you what else I'm going to do, and I'm going to let this sit for a long time, sometimes overnight before I do anything else, so that I know it's secure. I'm going to take some ribbon. I'll do this now so I can show you. Take some of this red ribbon and kind of guesstimate how long I need. I probably don't need this length, but again, I would rather have a longer piece than too short a piece. So I'll just cut that. And then you take, let me put this back on just in case. You take the ribbon and make sure it's lined up. Take your ribbon, whoops, and you put it through. I have a little bit of glue on my fingernail. You put it through the eyelet, a little loop there. There's my extra glue. Hold on. It's dried glue, so it comes off. You put your loop through. That glue does not want to let go, man. Okay. I still have to do my fray check, so I need to probably do that first, but I'll show you what I'm doing. So, and then you just pull it like that, and then I'm going to do the same on this side, and then we'll tie it into a little bow, and it looks adorable. I'll come back and show you that. I'm going to take that off so I can do my fray check around the edges. I have to let that all dry as well. and then I'll be back for the final. Okay, I am back and I am almost finished with my little journal, but I am going to stop here with this series and show you the outside of the video, of the journal. I still have to do some finishing touches on the inside, and I thought I would do a flip. I also have to finish the other journal, and I thought I would then do a flip through at that point. But you know, for now, I think I'm finished enough to show what I did. So I had forgotten about this little idea that I had to put this rickrack, I think it's called, in red on the front. And I had planned to put these flowers on, which look cute too. But I remembered this idea and I found this little button, sewed it on with some gold thread that I have, and attached it there, and I just think it looks adorable. So cute. And I'm going to do the other journal with the same idea, different image, but I didn't have another one of those buttons, so I'm going to use this little green button, which I think looks cute too. Whoops. It's a pretty green to match that, and it's a nice little size. So that's it for me for this series. I just wanted to say some final thoughts, and that is that if you've watched any or all of this, thank you first of all, and also if you're thinking about making a junk journal, I hope that you'll try it. You don't have to have all the stuff that I used. You can substitute many things. If you don't want to sew or don't have a sewing machine, look up on YouTube, look up no sew junk journal, and I know they have those out there. You can use, if you don't have a lot of fabrics or ribbons and things like that, you can, if you have clothing that you no longer want, you can use the fabric from your clothing. You can go to the thrift store and buy very inexpensive clothing that will make nice covers and other parts of your journal. Almost everybody has ribbons, I think. You can use wrapping paper, ribbons from your Christmas wrappings, or supplies, wrapping supplies, things like that. There are just a lot of different things you can do to start, and just look through the things that you have. You probably have books that you might be able to use those pages. You probably have buttons, some extra buttons that you can use off of clothing as well. Sometimes, you get those little packages of extra buttons with your clothes that you buy. Just think about things like that you can do. And also, you can use magazine images to decorate your junk journals. One other thing is, I know that the craft stores like the Michaels and Joann's very often will put their scrapbook paper on half price, so look out for sales like that. If you can go there, if you have a store near you, they often have things on clearance and you can pick up things that way. So anyway, I hope first of all, I hope that this was useful. I hope that you will give it a try. If you're thinking about making a junk journal, you'll just give it a try and have fun with it and be creative. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.